Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of Sunday Sessions. This is our monthly edition where we chat to people from across the diocese about faith, life and events across the diocese and the churches. And as you can imagine, we've recently heard that churches can now reopen for private prayer. And we obviously are very excited, and we thought we'd do a session talking about our reaction to churches reopening for private prayer, but also to reflect on lockdown and what has it been like for clergy during lockdown? What has it been like for our congregations? And has lockdown changed the way church will operate in the future? So a lot of big questions that we're going to get through today, and big questions need brilliant guests. So we have got Bishop June once again joining us from Llandaff. How are you, Bishop June?
Hi, Matt. I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Good, good. I also love to see that every time you're on Zoom, you've got the Pilgrim Bear just over in the corner
Over
there.
my shoulder, yeah.
Fantastic, looking over you. And we've also got Father Ben Rabjohns. Father Ben, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, very well.
Good, good. Father Ben, where are you speaking to us from?
From my study in Penrhiwceiber.
Penrhiwceiber, brilliant. Okay, thanks. For those of you who don't know, have a look at Penrhiwceiber on Twitter or Facebook. They do some amazing outreach work there, and I'm always really blown away by the work that they do. So please do check them out on Twitter, and I'll put the links when we post this video. Right, shall we start talking about some exciting news that we've received today? Churches can reopen for private prayer. Bishop June, I'm going to start with you. What was your initial reaction when you heard the news about our reopening?
Well, it was a huge sense of relief, Matt. You know, we've all felt that having our church buildings locked up, the doors closed, was not just abnormal, but it was almost offensive. This is going to be a symbol of hope for the communities. Yes, I mean, of course, they're excited about being able to go to non-essential shops. But actually, in the heart of every community, we have a church building where the doors ought to be open. The welcome is to come into the life of the church. And of course, that's symbolized by the building. We've discovered in these days that the church is a great deal more than the building, but that doesn't underestimate the impact that our buildings have. And Ben will talk about that in a moment, about because I know that he keeps his church building open day in and day out normally. I would want to say, of course, that this is only the very beginning, that we've got several stages to go before our churches are back up and running, anything like as we'd like them to be. This is the stage where people can simply come across the threshold for the beauty, the silence, the sense of God in our buildings. But we have got some more stages to go through where we can begin to gather for worship, and then we can get even more people and bigger events. But for today, the concentration is on opening the doors, and it's a joyful moment.
It really is a joyful moment. And I know, having seen the guidance from the Church in Wales, the hygiene and health and safety is of absolute paramount importance. And again, we'll post the links to all the guidance that people need to read so that they can open churches safely, and also for visitors to stay safe as well. But yeah, this is just wonderful news. And Ben, you know, knowing and having seen some of the things that you post on Facebook, what was your reaction to churches reopening?
I was just really excited, to be honest. It's a lovely feeling to be able to reopen the building again. As Bishop June was saying, we've been used to keeping our church building open all day, every day for the past couple of years. And I think that's made people in the congregation certainly miss it even more, actually, that it's been closed, because they've become quickly so used to just popping in and just being able to pop in and out whenever they feel like it, basically, within the hours we're open. So yeah, just a real sense of excitement on their behalf, especially, and sort of as soon as the First Minister made his announcement, the church WhatsApp group kicked off with people celebrating and posting little gifs of themselves dancing around and things. So much excitement.
Brilliant. So I mentioned, I love that there's a WhatsApp group for the church, and that's one of the things we'll come on to a bit later, because in the absence of church buildings, I think congregations have found a community online. I don't think it can replace what church buildings offer. I think there's something very sacred in that. But I love how, in the absence of coming together on a Sunday or event, we have still found a community in each other that has got us through lockdown. I think it's brilliant. We mentioned a little bit about health and safety guidance. Ben, I just wanted to come to you. How are you preparing for your churches to be open? What kind of steps are you going through to be ready?
Well, making sure that the building can work slightly differently for a start. So we've cleared the church of chairs for the moment, and we make it so that we can spread individual chairs around to keep them at an appropriate distance from each other so people can sit, and also so that we can actually reduce the number of chairs, because real thorough cleaning is going to be essential, obviously. So if we reduce the number of chairs, that reduces the number of things we have to clean, doesn't it? So that's what we started to do in preparation, keeping our fingers crossed for this moment to arrive. So that sort of sense of making sure that the building works for people to keep well apart. I mean, it's a big enough building for people popping in individually to keep apart, so it shouldn't be a problem. Making sure there's hand hygiene available by the door for people to come in, preparing signage to remind people about keeping their distance and remind people to sanitize their hands on the way in and the way out. So all those sort of basic things put in place, and putting in place then the cleaning procedure as well. I'm lucky having someone who manages the cleaning team in a hospital in the congregation, so they've put in place a cleaning protocol for me, ready for people to follow.
Oh, you're very lucky then, aren't you?
Yeah, really.
That's going to be like the cleanest church in South Wales. Yeah, I wonder if there's an awards you could win for like the cleanest church or something. You'd definitely be in there for that one. That's brilliant. What's your congregation's reaction been to lockdown in general? How have they responded? What was their initial thought when they heard that churches were having to close?
I think it was a bit of a shock to start with, wasn't it? Because it all happened quite quickly, didn't it? And quite suddenly. The sort of lockdown progressed really quickly. So I think there was a sense of shock to start with, and not quite believing it was happening. But then people accepted that it was necessary, could see it was necessary and needed. So people sort of got to that stage, really. And have responded really enthusiastically to keeping in touch with each other. The WhatsApp group's been good, but people have been phoning each other as well, and popping to each other's doors, helping each other out, that sort of thing. There's been lots of that just sort of naturally happening. No particular plan behind it. It just seems it's happened quite naturally and normally, really. They've responded well to joining in some online with worship and things. So that sort of thing, keeping together. There's been a real sense of togetherness still, even being separate. Yeah.
That's brilliant. So what kind of online services have you been offering?
I've been using Zoom on the whole for the Eucharist, because of the sense of gathering it provides. It's been lovely to have people sort of actually see little faces there. At least, you know, it's made a big difference. That, and I've used Facebook for sort of morning prayer sort of service.
And you've been doing that regularly, haven't you? I've noticed every time I check in the morning, Father Ben Rabjohns is live from the church for morning prayer. It's lovely. I think my whole stream seems to have been, priests live streaming services. It's been
it's been lovely to see people dotted through the day as well, hasn't it? I mean, like,
Have you been cheekily looking at other
places, night prayer?
Have you cheekily been looking at other church streams as well? Like, seeing what the neighbouring churches are offering online. Yeah,
I pop in to see different people. It's quite nice, especially to see people I know well. Just pop in and say hello.
Yeah, Bishop, how about you? How have you been worshipping during lockdown? Have you been Zooming?
I have been Zooming every evening at 7 o'clock. I join with my senior colleagues and we pray evening prayer together on Zoom. Do you know, that's been a really major factor in sustaining me spiritually, knowing that I would see colleagues and fellow Christians to share prayer with every day. It's so much the heart of who we are, our regular prayer life. And so that's been big for me. I've tried not to go on Zoom worship too often, because when the bishop pops up, it tends to have an impact. I've sometimes, what would you call it, Matt? A guest appearance.
Definitely a cameo from the bishop. I have seen that you have been dipping it. You've been asked to do some readings, haven't you?
I have, and I've done all sorts of things, which is lovely.
Yeah.
And I've also, I'm afraid, had a sneak look at some things when people don't know that I'm watching. But for instance, the next 3 weeks, I'm going to Whitchurch to worship. I'm preaching for the Whitchurch Zoom service on Sunday morning. I'm going to Tongwyn Lais. I'm going to the Neath Valley. Because, of course, as you can imagine, I really miss getting around the diocese. And so to get around it by Zoom has been a fantastic gift. And we mustn't stop doing it. We really mustn't. You know, it's brought a whole new dimension, because I'm very conscious that people find our buildings and our worship sometimes intimidating, particularly if they haven't been to church for years and years, or maybe not at all, ever. It can feel as if there's something going on that they really don't know how to participate. Now, all that has gone online because people can join in and actually they don't have to stay longer than they want. They can come and experience our life. And I'm really hoping that we will continue with that, because, and also do something more with it. Make sure that the people who come into our worship online know that they're welcome, know that actually we really want to invite them further in to our life. You know, Ben is so good in Penrhiwceiber. He is so good at drawing people into what is deeply attractive and comforting and challenging about the church. And actually, we need to take the gifts that he's got and his congregation have. We need to take those to new audiences.
I think it's really important that we do continue. I think, and Ben, I wondered if you've got an opinion on this. Do you think we have reached out to a different audience during lockdown? Do you think there are people who perhaps haven't come to church for a long time now, experiencing church for the first time?
It's probably been slightly less so for me because of using Zoom. It's more of a sort of closed thing, isn't it? And it's more of gathering the people who would usually gather. So I think that's probably been slightly less so here. I mean, one person who's popped up in my morning prayer feed a few times, I don't know who she is, but she said that she hasn't been to church or to a service for a long time and has found that very helpful. So I mean, that's been really encouraging, just sort of picking up one person at that sort of time of the morning. You know, and maybe I'll find out who she is at some stage and be able to do something more about it. But it's interesting to see the way in which that does allow people to engage in a different sort of way. I was talking to someone the other day about online worship, and especially Facebook's worship, that sort of the stuff that's streamed where anyone can just pop in quite easily. I was saying it's a bit like leaving the church door open for people to come into the building. It's a sort of less threatening way of sort of finding out what the church is about and just sort of popping in for whatever reason. You know, it could be because they're bored, or could be sat there in their pants eating their breakfast or something, you know, and just sort of browsing around. But you know, whatever reason, people sort of pop in and have a look, and it's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I think as well it's served well for people who perhaps can't go regularly because maybe they've got children doing sports events or what have you, or they work full time and it just becomes not a priority, to now be able to do church when they want it. And it doesn't have to be at that one time on a Sunday morning. You know, those live streams are up on Facebook for ages, and I've certainly noticed people dip in at various times during the day, and I think all we've done is extend church for a longer period of time online, but making it a lot more convenient for people as well. But I love that one person has found you on Facebook. You've not been to church before, but there is something about morning prayer that has attracted them, particularly during lockdown.
Yeah, it's
That's
interesting.
something great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Okay, my other questions. Bishop, sorry, I was just going to ask you about lockdown personally for you.
Yeah.
And how have you responded? So you do evening prayer, but as you say, and you go online and everything, but what's it like, the life of a bishop during lockdown? I mean, I'm sensing it's not quiet.
No. Like a lot of other people, Matt, lockdown's been quite intense, if I'm honest, which is very strange because, of course, it's also been completely limited to staying at home, as we've all been bidden to do. And I, who am used to being out and about, like everybody else, has had to live life inside Llysesgob. I'm lucky, I'm really blessed by the fact that I have my family here. My heart goes out to people who have been in lockdown living on their own. I think that's been really tough. And it's had a strange, uneven feel to it. There have been some days when it just feels a fantastic gift. That the challenges of it's almost as if it's reprioritized how we think about things. Things that we'd fretted about cease to be important. And so there's a whole recalibration of opportunity, and then other days it's felt lethargic and really hard to motivate yourself when you're not seeing people face to face and you're not able to engage with people in person. So, like everybody else, I would, if I'm honest, I would say that I'm keen to get out of lockdown. I'm keen to get back out and about in the diocese, but I think we have all discovered things in lockdown that we're not going to let go of. And that's been my question. I'm going around meeting the different, what are called deanery chapters. It's the clergy groups at the moment. I'm checking in with them as to how they're doing. And one of the questions I ask them is, what have you discovered in lockdown that you're now not going to let go of?
Wow. Ben, that's a good question. That's probably one better question than I've got on my list. Ben, is there anything for you? What would you not be giving up during once lockdown is ending?
I think one thing I've discovered, well, two things I've discovered. One is about myself, and one's about being a priest that I should probably have more confidence in rather than hold on to. I think the thing I've discovered about being a priest is that people really value the priest as a person who prays and prays for them. I mean, often the prayer life of a priest, because it's so hidden and it's just sort of, just part of the life, can feel almost like either like a luxury or like a waste of time. Like I'm just, I've got this luxury of sitting here praying, or, why on earth am I doing this? There's a million other things I could be doing. But really discover that people value the fact that I'm praying and that I pray for them, especially. That's been a real great encouragement to discover that afresh during lockdown, the sort of value that people place on the fact that I'm a person who prays, so that's been good. And I've discovered about myself that I don't do too well without other people, really. I've really missed other people. I thought I'd probably cope all right with lockdown, really, because I'm not, I'm probably in the wrong job, really, because I'm not really a sort of massive people person. I'm not sort of all over the place, sort of trying to find company. But I've actually really missed contact with people. I've really missed funeral visits, especially. They're one of the things that give me, well, a real, probably shouldn't use the word joy, but there is often joy doing a funeral visit, just being with people, getting to know people, and especially for a funeral visit, it's a very sort of intense and sort of brief moment of getting to know people. I've just really missed it, so that's something I've discovered about myself.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love what you said about the prayer, the life of a prayer. I really got a sense the prayer has been incredibly important to people during lockdown. I've seen a lot of prayer requests online on social media, lots of prayer initiatives. I think Thy Kingdom Come for me felt quite a big deal this year. And I know you guys in the Cummer Valley, is that right?
Penrhiwceiber Valley, yeah.
Penrhiwceiber Valley organised a 24-hour prayer event.
Yeah, so
Or
people signed up for slots to keep it going 24/7 for the
24/7, yeah.
The Sunday after Ascension to Pentecost. Yeah.
Yeah. I did. I signed up to do an hour, and it suddenly dawned on me: praying for an hour is a discipline. So now I'm.
The amazing thing about that actually is that first time ever from people in the parish, I had a message from people asking me how to pray, which was remarkable.
No, do you know what? I totally understand, because having gone to church all my life, then when you're left to your own devices for an hour, after I'd done the usual intercessions and, you know, the few selfish prayers, you know, that I want for myself, I was left with the Lord's Prayer and a Hail Mary, and I thought, how else? What more do I do now to pray? That's now got me reading more books about prayer. And we had a recent day of prayer, which I was blown away by the content of the different ways that you can pray. And I wonder if we will emerge from lockdown a more prayerful community. Bishop, I wondered what your thoughts are.
Well, I really hope you're right, Matt. I mean, it's one of my priorities that we're confident about our rhythm of prayer, because I actually do believe that people can be quite inconsistent. You know, they can say, I'm not a Christian, or I don't have any religion, or, you know, it doesn't do anything for me. And then you ask them, do they pray? Yeah, I pray, they say. And I think we just have to recognize that there's a deep, profound instinct in people, both to pray themselves, but also to honor the prayer that people commit for them. Now, we're about to open our buildings for private prayer. And I hope we won't see this as a stopgap until we can have proper gathered worship, but that actually what we'll do is we will recognize that people may need to come and learn to pray in our buildings. And the good thing about our churches is that if you sit in a church building and there's nothing happening, you know, the organ isn't playing, or the service isn't about to start and nobody's chatting to you, but if you just sit there, there's an enormous amount of resource to help you pray. There's the building itself. Many of our buildings are not just beautiful, but they have all sorts of nudges to pray, you know, things to look at. The silence, we live in a noisy world, and actually once we get past the fact that silence is scary, it becomes a place where we get past just, you know, I've got to make that shopping list, or what do I do next? If we can sit in the silence, that itself is really a deeply nourishing thing to do. And, you know, once you start praying in that sense, and it can be as simple as just, help me, God, you know, help my unbelief, help me in who I am and where I am. Once you utter any kind of prayer like that, actually things start happening. They really begin. You begin to see the world differently if you reach out for the presence of God. So that's all going to go on in our church buildings as we open them. And I know that people like Ben and all the clergy in the diocese won't just be thinking about, have I got enough hand sanitizer? They'll be thinking about, let me go back to basics, and how do I enable people to pray? How do I introduce them to the richness of what can happen for them? So isn't this going to be a great period when we, you know, we're not organizing events. We can't. We're not allowed to have events-based things in our buildings. But we are allowed to say, this is a house of prayer. It's real. It will do you good. And actually, God is here saying, come on in. I've got something to say to you.
That's wonderful. That is so nice. I think you're right about the back to basics and getting back to prayer. And I know that Father Michael Gable has written a prayer which we'll be releasing on Monday. So those who are thinking of going to church and need just to get started with a prayer after lockdown, we have something that we can offer. But Ben, what would you say to somebody who has perhaps followed us online, followed church online, gone to some Zoom services, and is now attracted to the church building for private prayer? What would you say to them about coming into the building and how to start praying?
Well, first, I guess just to be brave and go in. Don't be put off. So give it a go. I think one of the great things about prayer is you don't need to think too carefully about what to say, because it's a relationship with God, and therefore it's a relationship with someone who knows you completely perfectly before you even begin. So, I mean, you don't need to worry about what you say to God. You can say absolutely whatever you like. So if you sit there in silence and you feel like you want to tell God how you're feeling, just use the words that you'd use to tell anyone else how you're feeling. I think it's sort of getting to that sort of sense of it being a real relationship, a place where you can be totally honest. And one beautiful thing I heard about someone talking about, I'm not sure what cathedral it was, but it might have been a new cathedral building or a new church building, which was sort of all beautiful and sleek and modern with no sort of hidden corners. Someone commented, apparently, where do you go to cry? And thinking about a sort of medieval cathedral with lots of hidden corners and places like that, and church is a place where you can just bring your real self, yourself exactly as you are, without needing to hide anything at all.
Possibly the most perfect description of prayer I've heard. That is wonderful. That is wonderful. Okay, I've got a couple more questions. Let's have a little look. Okay, let's talk a little bit about where the church has changed since lockdown. So we're all very excited about coming back to our buildings for private prayer. But do you think the church itself has changed because of coronavirus and because of lockdown? Bishop, I'll start with you. Do you think we've changed as a church?
Well, in our essentials, of course, we haven't. We are still the body of Jesus Christ. We are still the family of God, the community of faith. We still put our trust entirely into the life of Christ, and our life is hidden with God. But isn't it fascinating that you can do all sorts of things, shop buildings, end Eucharists, face cataclysmic crises, and that all still endures. Now, having said that the essentials are the same, I don't anticipate that we're going to go back to where we were in 2019. I remember hearing a story about in a part of the world when a dictator closed down all the churches. And this wasn't just for 3 months, it was for about 10 years. And actually the church prospered. It reformed itself in homes. Prayer happened differently. In the end, actually, the dictator decided that he'd done more to stimulate the church's life than if he'd left it alone. And it may well be like that. It may well be that we look back and say, actually, the best thing that happened to us was that we were disturbed out of our habits and our assumptions. How will it be in the future? I'll be interested to know what Ben thinks about this. But I'm not gazing into the crystal ball. I don't have any special wisdom about it, except that what I do know is that we will find the answer to that question, what is the church going to be like, that we'll find that together. That's not just the bishop and her clergy. It's the whole people of God will find it. And in different contexts, it'll be different in the middle of Cardiff than it is in one of the Bally churches. We will find a new way of being as that people of God. Isn't that, it is just very exciting, isn't it? Because we will endure. We will stay faithful.
Very
But
much.
we will be different.
Yeah, we will be different. Ben, in terms of your reaction to, do you think the church has changed? What would you say?
I'd have said exactly the same as Bishop June to start with. Really, in its fundamental sense, I don't think the church has changed. There's lots of excitement about the online stuff, but I think there's a desperate need and a desperate desire to return to real physical gathering, and I believe that's totally essential to the nature of the church. And actually, I think it's one of the I think being physically together is one of the sort of unique selling points that the church has, in a way, that sort of gathering, and is so important because it's about us being real with each other. I think that's one of the things that teaches us to love one another, really, is the fact that we have to be together with real people, with the people with like annoying voices that we can't mute, the people who can't sing, you know, that real physical being together is so important. I think probably what we've discovered is some new and exciting things we can do, like online stuff. I mean, I never thought, especially because I can't stand the sound of my own voice, I can't stand listening to a recording myself. I never thought I'd be able to make a video message because, I couldn't stand listening to it back. But I've broken that barrier during the lockdown and made a couple of video messages, that sort of thing. The way online stuff can reach people, like I was saying earlier about the church door being open, a way in for people. I think in terms of those who can't come to church, I think it's given us two challenges in a way. Partly, how can we sort of keep reaching them with online stuff, but also a realization, having been locked down ourselves, just how miserable it can be being at home on your own, and how do we actually try and physically reach people who can't come to church as well as virtually reach people? Do we need to make more effort than ever to try and physically be with people who are on their own? I think that's a big challenge.
Yeah, I think I'm big with digital, push it a lot, but there is something even I've missed going to church. Even, I love going into a building and there's silence, or then people start coming into the room and it fills up, and then you're together. And I always look around and think, gosh, the only thing we've got in common is that we come to church and we all enjoy it, and you end up making friends that way. And that's something I just think is incredibly beautiful about the church, is it's a community as well. And I love that we've still carried that on. For me, the one thing I really hope is that our online offer is slightly different to our physical offer, and I think they should be very different. I don't think we should try and replicate what we do in church buildings online. I think there's an option to do something different, because very different audiences. So I'm excited about finding out what that is, because I don't think anyone's got the answer right now. We're quite new into this, and we're exploring and finding our own way. So I think in a few more months' time, we'll start coming through this with a much greater confidence in what our offer is online, and what it is physically as well.
And I wonder whether the celebration of the Eucharist, Matt, will be even more precious to us, because of course that's one of the things that we have missed. You can't just put some bread and wine on a kitchen table and think that that's what's happening. It's felt almost, I hope this isn't a sacrilegious comment, that the jam has been taken out of our donut. We've all been eating donuts with the hole in the middle, and actually what we desperately want is we want to rediscover the jam. You asked me how I was worshipping, and on Easter Day I celebrated in my chapel with the family, with my the people I was sharing the household with. But after that, and it's been really difficult because we've been through some major Christian festivals, I felt I had to not celebrate the Eucharist in the chapel because none of the people of the diocese were able to receive communion. And therefore, I had to be in solidarity with that experience. So I am desperate for my jam. and that will be, I just keep imagining what it'll be like to be back with the communities of the diocese celebrating the Eucharist once again.
Can't wait to line up. I've seen all those silly memes of people with those, Pez dispenser communion wafers, and I'm like, do you know what? I don't care what it looks like. I just want to be in that queue. I want to experience the whole Eucharist. I just want to feel that level of holiness that I've craved and missed. So I'm definitely with you on that one. Mm-hmm. Ben, what's your thoughts on the Eucharist? And do you think we'll be keeping it? We've all missed it, and do you think it'll be a lot more of a holy experience for people now that they haven't had it?
I hope so. I mean, it's been interesting seeing the different way people have reacted. I mean, I've done the complete opposite to Bishop June, and in that I've celebrated the Eucharist every day since lockdown, and almost every day it's been on Zoom with people joining me. It's interesting. We usually have a daily Eucharist in Penrhiwceiber, and it's interesting that the congregation has trebled from what it normally is on Zoom. So there've been more than usual people there. It's been it can never be a miserable experience to receive Christ in the Eucharist. It's obviously always been a beautiful experience for me, but it's been a very much diminished experience for me as well as for the congregation who've watched, because they're not there. The sacrament is there, Christ is there, but the Eucharist at that moment is not what it's meant to be. I think people in the congregation have really valued the fact that I've continued to celebrate the Eucharist, and have valued being able to join in that way, and knowing that it's being prayed for them, but it's not what it's meant to be. So there's a real sense of longing to be back to what it's meant to be.
And Ben, final thoughts on the week as we go into the week where we can reopen. What's your final thoughts?
Well, I'm hoping we can get open as soon as possible. We've been working to try and get stuff into place ready, so I think most things are ready. So I'm hoping we can open as soon as possible. When I arrived here, I came from a place where the church was open as it is here every day, from Aberavon, where the churches are open every day, and arrived here and going into church, and it was locked. And that just felt unnatural to me, having come to a place where it was open. So I'm looking forward to being able to walk into church and sit down to pray and know that at any moment someone else could come in. I mean, that just feels like the totally natural way for a church to be. It should be a place where prayer is happening and where at any moment someone can walk in.
Brilliant. Bishop, final thoughts as we go into a week where our church buildings are finally reopening.
Well, I want to be practical, Matt, and say to everybody, you don't have to open the building instantly. If you need to take time, as Ben was saying right at the beginning, that our priority is safety, and some churches will be much easier to accommodate to this than others. So don't be too disappointed if your local church isn't open instantly on Monday morning. We're going to be rightly cautious about it. And to see it as a first step, the physical distancing that we're going to have to live with for a long time is very painful. It's not natural to us. We are intimate people, we're relational people, we're people interdependent on each other. And so what we'll experience in the buildings isn't the full joy, it isn't the full experience, but it's a very good step in the right direction.
Thank you very, very much, Bishop June, Father Ben. That has been a really exciting conversation, and as you say, quite joyous as well that we're at this point. So thank you very much. And just to close, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in to Sunday Sessions. We'll be back next month with a different topic and some new guests. So if you do have anything you think you'd like us to talk about, drop us a line in the comments below, and we'll line up some guests for the next Sunday Sessions. In the meantime, have a wonderful week, and take care and look after yourselves, and we'll see you soon.